Everyone expects the Dodgers to get Shohei Ohtani, so that means they're going to get Shohei Ohtani, right? What should we expect from Walker Buehler, and what does that mean for the rotation and what the Dodgers are looking for this offseason? And the Silver Slugger awards were announced, and the Dodgers only had one winner. Were they snubbed? All that and more coming up. So let's get locked on Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yo, Dodger fans. Welcome to Locked On Dodgers. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 local sports daily podcast network. Locked On, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Jase Medical. Empower yourself when you purchase a Jase case, providing you with a personal supply of 5 antibiotics that treat 50-plus infections. Get yours today at jasemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com. This is the daily podcast covering the Los Angeles Dodgers, bringing you the smart fans' perspective on our boys in blue. You can find us wherever you find podcasts and on YouTube simply by searching for Locked On Dodgers. And if you want to become an everydayer, which is some of our favorite listeners and watchers, all you have to do is listen or watch every day or as close to every day as possible. So if you want to do that, you can subscribe wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube, and you'll get notified when our episodes are ready for you, which is usually before you wake up every Monday through Friday. If there's your first time listening or watching, I'm Vince Samperio, usually joined by co-host Jeff Snider, but I'll be going solo dolo today. And Jeff and I are both lifelong Dodger fans that have watched a lot of Dodger games. We've covered the team. We've spent time in the clubhouse locker room. We've interviewed players. We've done a lot of things in regards to the Dodgers. We're not quite insiders, though. We're just here to bring you some what we believe is smart, rational takes about the Dodgers, and hopefully something that you can agree with or not agree with. But either way, you're here listening with us. So let's hop right into it. Like Jeff mentioned yesterday, the GM meetings ended early. Not much traction due to the virus that was going around, but enough time for Mark Feinsand from MLB.com to poll some GMs about who he believes is going to get Shohei Ohtani. And of the 14 GMs that responded, 10 of them believe that the Dodgers are still the favorites to land Shohei Ohtani. And that just kind of goes on with like a lot of betting odds in different areas that have the Dodgers as the favorite for Ohtani. And just in general, most of the reports, John Heyman was on the Bleacher Report app earlier in the day, and he still had the Dodgers as, the favorites for Ohtani. The other nugget that I'll talk about that Heyman added is he still believes Ohtani will get $500 million in his contract. And, that seems like a lot still, but, would that be too much for the Dodgers to go after? But first we'll talk about Ohtani. That we haven't heard anything from Shohei Ohtani directly. Obviously, we haven't heard anything from his agent. We haven't heard anything other than, we've heard different teams kind of be added to the mix or be front runners. Like the Rangers were said to be one of his top teams now, and then the Cubs are expected to be super aggressive, so now they're thrown into the mix. And then obviously the Dodgers have been in there, Giants, Mariners still in there as well. A return to the Angels, I guess, is always possible. You have the Yankees and Mets, but it doesn't seem like the Mets would be so deep into the luxury tax if they go into Ohtani that whatever 40-50 million a year becomes almost double that with the tax that they're in already. So I don't know if they'll be willing to do that. The Yankees, they do need left-handed bats, but I don't know if DH is the right guy or the right person. Ohtani would transcend, any team, obviously, and would fit in. But when you have a team with Aaron Judge and Giancarlo Stanton, and you need both of them in your lineup for the most part, it's hard to get somebody that's a DH only because, and Judge can still handle the outfield, but at some point he might not be able to. Stanton Looked like last year he can't move anymore, but maybe he'll have a fresh, healthy offseason and push it into it. But whatever the case is, like I said, we're here to talk about the Dodgers and them being the favorites. And I honestly don't know if them being the favorites is just the fact that they are a team that really wants Otani, that seemingly didn't do much last offseason in order to have money for this offseason when Otani would be available, that they have the money to do so, that they, the fact that he can't pitch is a deterrent a little bit because the Dodgers do, excuse me, the Dodgers do need pitching, but it's also a matter of, is it enough a deterrent to push him off? And I don't think so. I think the Dodgers, have more than enough money to sign Otani and sign 2 starting pitchers or trade for a starting pitcher and sign a starting pitcher, whatever the case is, and kind of push that forward. And if Otani does come back, great. If not, that's where, kind of gets murky. But the 500 million that is out there, well, that Heyman put out there. He said, he was on record before saying 600 mil. He believes the fact that he can't pitch and the fact that it's his second Tommy John surgery, knocks off 100 mil off the top. It's just hard to see. And like I said, it's hard to compete with quote unquote dumb money. So I do believe there's someone out there that gives Shohei Ohtani 500 mil. I don't know if that's the Dodgers because, coming back from second Tommy John, not a guarantee. And we'll talk a little bit more about this in the next segment. We talk about Walker Buehler, but, it's not a guarantee that he comes back to exactly what he was before. And obviously we've seen a lot of unprecedented things with Ohtani so far in his career. So, I'm not going to rule him out. And even if it takes him 2 years to come back, if assuming you sign him to a longer term deal, you can still get that pitching side of things from him at some point. But the 500 mil, I mean, even if it goes over 10 years, that's 50 mil a year. It's a lot of money, but I do think where everything kind of sits in with Ohtani is that it makes baseball sense. They technically do need a DH and a hitter. They will need a pitch. You're always going to need pitching. So when he can pitch again, you'll have a pitcher there for you. And then, obviously the business of it, bringing Ohtani to your team brings not a completely different fan base. The Dodgers already have a strong Japanese fan base, but it does bring more of that fan base. It does bring, a fan base of people that might not even be huge baseball fans, but they're Ohtani fans, or they want to see something they've never seen before with Ohtani. New marketing opportunities and everything that comes with it. So it makes sense on the baseball, it makes sense on the field, it makes sense off the field. And it's just a matter of, how deep do these links and ties and rumors that the Dodgers are, Friedman's enamored with Ohtani and that the Dodgers are enamored with Ohtani. And that's what all this, last season not spending, does it really mean that? And I don't know, maybe I'm just skeptical. I just don't see that being the way they go. And we haven't seen, I do think the Dodgers stick to their guns, for better or for worse in terms of the front office. And, the Mookie Betts deal took a while to get done, but when it was done, it didn't take too long. If the pandemic didn't happen in 2020, Mookie Betts might have had that deal in place, even earlier, whatever the case is. But I don't know. I'm skeptical of all the Dodger love, and maybe that's just me trying to, put up a wall, and so I don't get hurt if the Dodgers don't get Ohtani. But it is still curious to see how they are the odds-on favorite from Vegas. They are the favorite in terms of other general managers. They are the favorite from a lot of the beat writers. And, it does get you a little bit excited for the possibility of Ohtani coming to the Dodgers. And, we're just going to have to obviously wait and see what happens. So I know we say that a lot, but we can only give you what we think is the take or a rational thought or a smart thought or just a thought in general. It doesn't have to be rational or smart. But at the end of the day, we don't know what's going to happen, and it's all going to come down to what actually does happen. So we shall continue on with Otani and, what happens there. On the flip side, I don't think he may hold up the pitching side of things too much because he can't pitch next year. So whoever signs him is still going to need pitchers if they need pitching beforehand, which, the Dodgers would. So I believe Robert Murray was out there said that he believes the pitching market might start heating up even before the winter meetings in December. So we'll see what happens there as well. Speaking of pitching, Walker Buehler is a pitcher. He will pitch for the Dodgers next year, we hope. But what can we generally expect from him coming off a second Tommy John? Is he can he be that ace again, or is it going to take a while, or do they have to temper expectations? We'll talk about Walker Buehler and all that coming up. So make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers. Today's episode is brought to you by Jase Medical. We spend a lot of time talking together, you and I, or you and us, or us and you, however you want to word it. We get fired up with wins. We get down on losses. We talk about who's going to start and who sits, and examine every part of the world that is the Dodgers. I'm thankful for that connection we have, and I want our chat to be a little more personal now. So whether you're on extended travel, you're bracing for a major weather event, or limited by yet another supply shortage, you're covered because Jase Medical has you covered. Thanks to our partners at Jase Medical, lifesaving antibiotics and a long list of daily medications can be ordered in a 1-year supply. Even ED generics for Cialis, Viagra, and Revatio prescriptions are available. So go online right now. Go to jasemedical.com and receive your 12-month supply of your daily medication. Remember to use the promo code LOCKEDON at checkout for a discount as well. One verified customer had this to say about Jase, quote, "I'm thankful for this service. Supply chain issues caused me to cut pills in half to have it. I ordered most of my daily meds with a year supply. I also ordered the antibiotic kit. I feel secure now. Prices are lower than local pharmacies. I highly recommend this for everyone," end quote. So if you're someone would like to get some peace of mind by having a year supply of any daily med, go to jasemedical.com to see if it's offered for you. And remember to use the promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off your purchase. That's jasemedical.com, promo code LOCKEDON. Go check out Jase today. I want to thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day. If we're not your first listen of the day, that's fine. We could be your first listen, your second listen. As long as you're listening at some point in your day, we appreciate you. And if you do that every day, if you watch or listen every day, you're part of a group called the Everydayers, and we like the Everydayers. So go be a part of the Everydayers by listening or watching to Locked On Dodgers every day. And remember, there's a lot of baseball talk on SiriusXM, even in the offseason. So go check out SiriusXM or get the XSM app and find their baseball stations and listen to what everyone's talking about. Walker Buehler is, was trying to come back in 2023 this past season. Maybe if he could have definitely come back and pitched for the Dodgers, but probably would have been smart for his long-term health. He still felt sore after he pitched and got on the mound in the minors. And just didn't have that recovery time, and he wasn't gonna be able to come back and help the Dodgers out in the postseason. So he got shut down. But he's a wild card for the 2024 season, mainly because we don't know what to expect. Now, this is his second Tommy John surgery. He came back, and velocity wasn't quite where he was beforehand, but again, he was trying to rush to come back. Maybe wasn't at full strength yet. Now he'll have another full off season to go through, so could come back there. But I just kind of wanted to go through and talk about the good and bad of pitchers that have two Tommy John surgeries, because the other day Brandon Gomes talked about Walker Buehler specifically, and he said that the team is still talking about whether he'll have innings restrictions next year or what the plan is. And the easiest and most common person to tie him to is Nate Eovaldi. Nate Eovaldi had a little bit more time in between his Tommy John surgeries. He had one in 2007 and then one in 2016. When he did come back in 2017, he missed 2017. When he came back in 2018, he did make 21 starts that year. He did throw 111 innings, and obviously we remember him in the postseason, pitching pretty well for Boston in that postseason when they won the World Series. He did get the loss in that long game for the Dodgers. In that 18-inning game, he did get the loss. He gave up the home run to Max Muncy, but he was pretty good besides that. He had a 1.29 ERA, 7 innings, 1 run in the ALDS, 7.1 innings, 2 earned runs in 2 games in the ALCS, and then, just that 1 run in 8 innings in over 3 games in the World Series. So the first year removed from his Tommy John surgery, he threw 111 innings in the regular season. He threw another 20 some innings in the postseason, so 130 innings. And I think if the Dodgers can count on 110 innings from Walker Buehler in the regular season, plus whatever they need out of him in the postseason, I think that's a good bottom, ceiling, or not a ceiling. That's a good floor to shoot for. Other guys that have had 2 Tommy John surgeries that have come back, Jameson Taillon had one in 2014 and 2019. He came back and pitched well enough for the Yankees. After coming back, he was with Pittsburgh, traded to the Yankees, performed well enough, got a deal with the Cubs. Hasn't been that great with the Cubs, but he's been healthy and been able to pitch. Maybe not quite where he was before. Daniel Hudson was a crazy one because he had Tommy John in 2012, came back, and then had Tommy John again in 2013. He had to kind of go away from being a starter. He was a starter back then, went away from being a starter, kind of became a reliever, and we know what he's done since then, been a pretty solid reliever. Joakim Soria had a Tommy John in 2003, and then again in 2012, and he came back. He still pitched relatively well. Then you have Chris Capuano, who had one 6 years apart, and when he came back, he pitched well enough. 4.37 career ERA, 4.38 career ERA, 4.37 after a second Tommy John surgery. So, still relatively well. And there's a list of guys that haven't come back, but guys like Josh Johnson, Chris Medlin, Brandon Beachy, who you might remember with the Dodgers. The Dodgers they were waiting for him to figure things out, never quite happened or get healthy. Brian Wilson, had his second Tommy John surgery, then came to the Dodgers, had one good year, and then one not so good year. I think for Buehler, the fact that he almost came back last year, that he looked pretty good, is obviously a positive sign. That his velocity, even if it wasn't quite what it was before, that it was close enough to where if he has like I said, a full off season, strengthening that arm, strengthening those muscles, building everything up, I'm sure he'll be touching 96 again, at least 95, 96 again once we get back in spring training and heading toward the season. But it's hard to not just say, oh, the Dodgers don't need a number 1 or 2 starter because they have Walker Buehler. It's hard to not say that, but it's a reality that he might not be one. And he could not have the stuff that or make him a 1 or 2 starter. 2, he might not be reliable as a 1 or 2 starter in terms of being able to take the ball every 5th day. And for the Dodgers, I think next year that depending who they sign, depending what happens, I don't think they're going to be, pushing their starting pitchers. Like, I don't think they're all of a sudden going to start pushing their starting pitchers to throw 200 innings, everybody. I think, they'll have a rotation of 5 starting pitchers, and then they'll have, 4 to 5 guys behind them that can come up as needed and pitch when needed, or even have, maybe even a 6-man rotation, depending, like I said, how things go. In the offseason. So I think they can get, I think 20 starts for Walker Buehler is a nice place to aim for. Get 20 starts. That should be around 100 plus innings. Obviously, hopefully getting stronger as the season goes on, getting stronger going into October, because, as I mentioned on an episode before, like Walker Buehler is that dog for the Dodgers. He is that guy. They've won a lot of series since he, 2018 made the World Series, 2020 won the World Series, 2019, 2021 lost in the, one loss in the DS, one loss in the CS, but not necessarily his fault. And, I think that he has a lot to do with it, and he can still be that guy in October. We saw Eovaldi do it this past October, and, pitch very well for the Rangers and help lead them to a World Series victory. So I'm excited to see what we're going to get out of Walker Buehler, and I'd be even more excited, if the Dodgers do go out and get an ace and then another strong starting pitcher, and then now Walker Buehler can slot in wherever he needs to. Doesn't have to rush back and carry the load for the Dodgers. He can, get back to being comfortable. Bobby Miller getting comfortable as well, and all these other young guys that they have, and not having to count on. This year it's not the Dodgers were counting on Walker Buehler, but they kind of had thoughts of Walker Buehler being able to pitch for them. Didn't work out. Dustin May, Tony Gonsolin for sure. Like I think you don't even talk about them pitching, or at least Dustin May for sure, because he had his earlier in the year. I think you just kind of shut him down all next year. Don't worry about it. Tony Gonsolin, obviously same thing. He has Tommy John, so he won't be able to come back anyways. But I think for Buehler, you aim for 20 starts in the regular season and go from there. And obviously, if he feels good and feels great, he's gonna want to be pushed. The Dodgers, should probably feel comfortable pushing him. But we'll see what happens. But I'm always excited to see Walker Buehler pitch until there's no reason to not be excited about it, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing what he can do in 2024. So Silver Slugger awards were announced yesterday. The Dodgers only had one winner. Were they snubbed? They definitely were not snubbed. So we'll talk about that. So make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers. If you are watching or listening right now, we appreciate you. If we are your first listen of the day, we appreciate you. If you watch or listen every day and you're an everydayer, we appreciate you. And if you're not one of those, well, you got to be at least one of those if you're listening to this. But if you're not someone who makes this your first listen, go ahead and try it out, on your way to work, at the gym, when you wake up, when you're getting ready for work, or if you work from home, just listen at home. But, you can listen at any point of the day. But as long as you're listening and watching every single day, we appreciate you as being an everydayer. All right, so let's get into this final. Silver Slugger awards were announced. Mookie Betts won a Silver Slugger in the outfield, did not win as a utility player. Cody Bellinger did not win in the outfield, but did win as a utility player. So, those guys, between Acuna, Betts, Soto, and Bellinger, I needed one of Mookie or Bellinger to win as utility in order to fit them all in. So, I'm fine with how it all laid out. In the outfield, Mookie is going to finish second in MVP voting. He should be a Silver Slugger. But what is interesting is in the National League, at first base, Matt Olson won Silver Slugger. And it's interesting because we know that Freddie Freeman finished higher than Matt Olson in the MVP because Freddie Freeman's a finalist and Matt Olson wasn't. But for the most part, I mean, Matt Olson, obviously Freddie Freeman was a finalist for Gold Glove. He has value defensively. But, similarly, he has a lot of his value is offensive, and you look at the different ways of valuing offense, and it just depends. Matt Olson led the league in home runs, led the league in RBI, led the league in slugging percentage. Was very close to Freddie Freeman in OPS. Like, it's not a complete snub that Matt Olson won Silver Slugger. I mean, Silver Slugger, you think of a slugger, you think of home runs, and Matt Olson had a lot of those home runs. But it is interesting, just for the fact of, you look at defensive WAR this season, and Freddie Freeman had a defensive WAR of on Baseball Reference of negative 1.7. Matt Olson had a defensive WAR of 0, so average. So Freddie had more Baseball Reference WAR on offense than Olson did, but Olson wins the Silver Slugger. It's just interesting because, like, if the offense or if the defense is essentially a wash or close to a wash, and you're voting for MVP and Silver Slugger, you would think that if somebody's above you for MVP, they'd also be above for a Silver Slugger. But not quite how it worked out. I don't think Freddie Freeman's losing any sleep over it. I don't think anyone really, cares that much. It just was interesting because, like I said, if he's going to be ahead in MVP, and then there are different voters, I understand that, but if you're going to be ahead of MVP, and you should be ahead of Silver Slugger if you consider the defense wash. If you consider the defense, Freddie to have better defense, then I guess it makes sense to have. And it's hard to say, oh, Matt Olson doesn't deserve the Silver Slugger because he does deserve it. I was just curious to see how that voting went. The one snub that did happen is at DH because the Dodgers had finalists at catcher as well with Will Smith, obviously, but the winner at catcher, the National League, was William Contreras, which I don't have an issue with. He was very good offensively. Will Smith had issues after breaking a rib early in the season, and didn't quite have the second half of the season that he would have wanted. Where the snub does come from is DH. Bryce Harper won, and I don't know. I'm trying to figure out exactly why Bryce Harper won over JD Martinez. There's, not a lot of reasons or stats that should have happened. I don't think there's any reason other than Bryce Harper is a bigger name than JD Martinez because, obviously Blake Harper missed some time. JD Martinez had, much more than him. But then when you look at the numbers, I mean, Bryce Harper, county numbers aren't there. JD was really good this year, and Bryce was good too. But I just don't know where the voters can pick him over JD Martinez. Bryce Harper ended up playing in 126 games, 29 doubles, 21 homers, a 293 batting average, a 499 slugging, a 900 OPS, a 146 OPS plus. That's good. That is very good. But JD Martinez had a little bit more slug, and played in less games than Bryce Harper actually, but 27 doubles, 33 homers, 103 RBI, 893 OPS. I guess it's not as much of a snub as I'm making it out to be. But it just felt like JD deserved it. But Bryce, I guess it kind of goes like, what are the voters looking at specifically? Because if you're looking at OPS, yeah, Bryce Harper had the higher OPS, but Freddie Freeman also had the higher OPS over Matt Olson, and you picked Matt Olson over Freddie Freeman on the other side. So, or actually, no, Freddie didn't have a higher. Yeah, Olsen ended up having the higher OPS, but regardless. Um, so I went in talking about how JD got snubbed. Maybe the snub wasn't as great as I thought, but still, it is interesting to see how how the voters decide to vote. Um, you never really know, like counting stats. Is it OPS? Is it advanced stats? I don't know exactly what the voters are looking at, but I guess I just want to show more love to JD than maybe even he deserved at this point because Bryce was good and they played similar amount of games, and JD just hadn't beaten home runs. I don't know. This is why I don't like talking about awards, really, especially like Silver Slugger, Gold Glove, like these types of awards, because like at the end of the day, I'm sure the players care a little bit, and I'm sure if one of them had to go to arbitration, which none of these guys will have to go to arbitration. It looks nicer when you have these awards behind you, but at the end of the day, does it really matter? Not so much. So that's gonna do it for this week. That's gonna do it for today's episode. Thank y'all for listening. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day. Make sure to become an everydayer by listening or watching every day. There's a lot more players to talk about that we haven't got into. I mean, we've talked about Corbin Burns, but we haven't even talked about any of the free agent pitchers, any of the other trade targets. There's a lot of names for us to still get into, and we'll definitely get into that, as time goes on. The awards get announced. The big awards get announced next week. We know probably that the Dodgers aren't going to win any. I don't think James Outman has enough juice to beat out Corbin Carroll for Rookie of the Year, and we're pretty much conceded that Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman are going to finish 2 and 3 in MVP. But we'll talk about it if there's any surprises in the voting and any free agent news that happens or any new rumors and links and everything for that comes to the Dodgers. We'll talk about all that as the weeks go on. So thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen. Go listen or watch every day. Become an everydayer. You can find us where you find podcasts and on YouTube. You can find us on social media, Twitter and Instagram at Locked On Dodgers. You can find Jeff on Twitter at Snider. I'm at Vincent91. You can DM either of us for any questions, comments, or concerns. You can send those via email, lockedondodgers@gmail.com, or via voicemail text at 323-863-5625. We're here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be here with us. When you get in your car, if you're at home, tell your smart device, play podcast, Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. Have a good one.